Hey YouTube, welcome to my channel. In this particular video, I'm going to be doing a horary demonstration whereby I'm going to be consulting the oracle that is astrology in order to gain insight about my life. If you would like more horary videos, definitely like this video. If you don't know what horary astrology is, it's basically a branch of astrology. If I'm not mistaken, it might actually be the original form of astrology whereby, you ask a question and you cast a chart for the hour. Horary means hour. You cast a chart for the hour and you use those current planetary alignments to answer the question. So horary is fascinating because you can discover all types of things with horary astrology, such as finding missing objects. And in this case, it can be very useful in determining whether or not you will get the job, or whether or not you should marry this person. So horary can be very, very informative, and unlike natal astrology, it is more bound to a certain set of rules. And so when you practice horary astrology, you really should be using Regiomontanus, but I have like read books like Anthony Lewis has a book on horary astrology where he recommends the Regiomontanus system, but he does use some examples from other astrologers who use different systems. But if you notice in my videos, I tend to use whole signs for natal charts, but I definitely use Regiomontanus for horary charts. And furthermore, you are also bound to the specific rulership, meaning when you are approaching horary, you shouldn't be using Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto in order to delineate the chart from the standpoint of it ruling a house or a sign, because when horary was developed, it was not developed with those planets in mind, because they didn't know about those planets. And so there's a very tight intrinsic system that's being used, and it's very simple, and like horary can be very simple. So and this is one thing I love about it. It can be very simple and objective, unlike natal astrology, which is more complex. But in any event, last year back in 2023, I applied for this job. This particular company specializes in like security and fire protection, network services for different residential places and businesses. So basically, it was like a company that would install security systems, but they also had a dispatch center as well. So the particular job will call for you to respond to callers, or if a security system went off, like an alarm system, you would dispatch the proper services if needed. So I felt like I was, really qualified for the position because I actually have previous work experience as a emergency road service dispatcher for an insurance company. So, and I did really well in that position. I really liked it. It was a call center, so of course it was trash on some days. But let me know in the comments if you've ever worked at a call center, because that to me is like a sixth house, third house kind of job. But nonetheless, I had applied for the job, and lucky for me, I was able to gain an interview. So I went and interviewed, and it was a woman that interviewed me, and the interview was about 8 in the morning. So I got there on time. I should have got there a little early, but I got there on time. And the interview was really short. It went well in my opinion. Like, it was pretty pleasant, but she really didn't ask me many questions. She really spent the interview like just discussing like what the job entails of and what would be expected of me if I were to get the job. And she asked me a few brief questions, and maybe I think I spoke a little bit about my position and experience as a road service dispatcher. So I thought there was some synergy there. I was saying like this seems pretty similar to what I used to do, except I wouldn't be what I used to do is I would dispatch to people who were experiencing some type of vehicular malfunction, like tire went flat, you battery went dead, you need a tow, stuff like that. So after the interview, I was told that I should be getting, a yay or nay within 7 days. And after like maybe 2 or 3 days, maybe 3 or 4, I didn't hear anything. And me being the Aries moon person that I am, I began to grow impatient and got impulsive. And I said, well, I just want to know, am I going to get the job or not? So I casted a chart. This is the chart. And as you can see, we have 22 degrees of Gemini rising, which is appropriate considering the type of job this is. Gemini is the sign of communications, technology, writing, speaking, all of that. And in a Horary chart, the person who was asking the question, or, well, in this case, that isn't always the case, but in this particular case, I'm represented by the first house. Because the question is for me. I'm not asking for my sister. If I would be using the ruler of the third house. If I was asking, something for my mother, I would be looking at the ruler of the 10th house. But nonetheless, the question, I'm asking it for me. And so I'm represented by Mercury because Mercury rules the Gemini ascendant. So Mercury, aka me, is in the 5th house in Libra. And that's a pretty good sign straight off the bat, because the 5th house is called the house of good fortune, so it is a benevolent house. And Mercury in Libra is a pretty strong position. It's not what we would call essentially dignified, but Mercury does have rulership over the air element or the air triplicity. So Mercury and Libra have some things in common. It's not like Mercury is in no man's land in Libra like he would be in Sagittarius. So in this chart, if Mercury were in Sagittarius, that would mean, hey, you're not really a fit for this job, or you're not, the person is kind of out of their territory here. And if Mercury would have been in Pisces, that would be like, yeah, you're way out of your territory. So it's not a Mercury in Virgo or a Mercury in Gemini either, whereby the person is a damn near perfect fit for the job. But Mercury in Libra does show where, I am qualified. Now, the problem is that Mercury is being combusted by the big ass sun. So as you can see, the sun is right by Mercury at 24 degrees of Libra. And combustion is one of the strongest impediments for a planet, and that is really emphasized within horary astrology. Because when a planet is under combustion, it is not in its own light. Just think about being burned out and dried out by the sun. It can be a very debilitating experience for the planet. So when a planet is, so in this case with Mercury being under combustion, that can show where I am basically invisible. I'm not being seen in my own light, being overlooked, being overshadowed by something else. So that's not the best sign. And furthermore, we see K2, aka the dragon's tail, or as some have called it, by some I mean me, the ass of the dragon, that is also right by Mercury. And this is not an advantageous point within the chart. The dragon's tail is known to bring a decreasing energy to the matters, and so it can show loss, disillusionment, drainage, being turned down, not gaining anything. It can mainly point to a loss. And so when I saw that, I was like, well, that doesn't really look too favorable after all. So the job itself is represented by Pisces on the 10th house, which means that Jupiter is the planet that is going to be taking on the responsibility for representing this particular company. And here we have Jupiter and Taurus retrograde in the 11th house. So that is showing that this is a pretty stable job. It seems like they're going back and making some changes. That's the type of stage that they're in, but they seem to be pretty stable because Taurus is a fixed sign. And and Jupiter is with the part of fortune, and so that's a pretty good sign as well. Now the other or the competitor would be represented by the seventh house, the house that is diametrically opposed to the first house. And here we have 22 degrees of Sagittarius, which means that Jupiter is doing double duty and also representing the competition or the other. Now, when I saw this, I already knew my answer. Like I knew what it was, because in my mind, I said, "Hey, Jupiter is representing or giving himself pretty much to the seventh house, which is the house of the other, the house of the competitor." And I also, one thing in horary that is extremely important is essential dignity, but dignity in general, knowing which planets rule what signs and which planets, how a planet is feeling about another planet based on the sign that it is in. So Jupiter and Taurus really favors the moon and Venus. Moon and Venus are the two female planets, which in this particular chart is going to be representing a woman. And so in horary astrology, when there is a connection between you and the thing in which you're asking about, but there is no connection between you and the thing in which you're asking about, that answer is leaning towards no. So we see Mercury in Libra is not forming any sort of aspect with Jupiter and Taurus, nor is there any type of reception going on, even just by sign. But with Jupiter and Taurus, we do see it favoring Venus and the moon, because Venus is the domicile ruler of Jupiter and the moon is the exalted, Venus is the domicile ruler of Taurus and the moon is the exalted ruler for Taurus. And so I was thinking, this can indicate that the person that interviewed me or the job is probably preferring a woman for this position. Now, I think it's worth mentioning that as I was leaving the building, I saw a woman in the lobby that was being ready to be interviewed after me. So that supports that. I'm not saying that this is necessarily the case, but it is supporting what I am seeing in the chart. Furthermore, Venus and Jupiter are applying to each other. So Jupiter's retrograde and moving backwards towards 8 degrees of Virgo. And Venus and Virgo is moving forward and is going to apply a trine with each other. And so that can show the connection between the job as well as a woman. And so that is how I basically came to the conclusion that I'm not going to get this job, because there's too much of a connection between Jupiter and Venus and Jupiter and the 10th and the 7th house. And there's no connection between me, the moon. There's no connection between me and the ruler of the 10th house. And then the moon in a horary chart shows like the flow of events, and moon just recently separated from a square with Saturn in the 10th house, and the moon is going to be applying to what is the moon applying to? No, it's separated. It has a while before it applies to another planet, but it's separated from a square with Saturn, which is not, that's not a good thing. It's, horary chart. There's kind of like a interruption, or like after the interview, I didn't even hear anything else. Like they told me I would be told yeah or nay. I was told nothing. And so that's represented by the moon, Saturn, like no connection, no communication, like just nothing. Yeah, and what else can I say about this chart? In horary, the general outcome is represented by the 4th house, and as you can see, that Venus in the 4th house representing a woman, in my opinion, being in connection with Jupiter, which rules the 7th and the 10th, which is sort of saying this job is going to someone else. So I hope you all found this video informative and insightful. Horary is definitely something that I really, it's probably my favorite type of astrology right now. And again, if you want more horary videos, just like this video and tell me in the comments below. And if you have a horary question that you would like to ask me, you can shoot me an email. And my horary readings are like pretty like reasonable to like low price, because I think that Horary is kind of like it's a it's a question of the hour. So when people come and they want to find out where is their dog, or they lost an earring, or where is, am I gonna get a job, should I marry this person, I think that's a pretty simple question. Not saying that Horary is simple, but it's something that I think a lot of people can, gain a lot of insight from. And it doesn't take as much out of me as natal astrology. Natal astrology takes more out of me, so those readings are always going to be a bit higher than the Horary readings, just because natal astrology requires you to talk about everything. And in a Horary chart, not all of the planets are going to be key players. Not all of the planets, you don't have to pay attention to all of the planets. There are really key planets that you need to focus on, and that makes everything, that is able to help you come to a more clear and concise judgment. So again, like this video, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe, and until then, next time.